Hey guys, it's Matho here once again, and just going to go over the development manifestos for the past few days that we've been given in some small detail. I'm not much of a mechanics guy, especially not for like theory crafting and caring about all the intricacies of the game, and this stuff is a bit overwhelming. There are pages and pages and essays about the changes and what's happening with the game, and I'm just going to give you small interpretations of my shit. And if you want real in-depth analysis, probably check out some other YouTubers and stuff, or Path of Exile Reddit, where they break it down like a science, you know. But I guess I'll just say it real quick. Looks pretty good. I think everything looks more or less good. A couple of questionable decisions, which, you know, maybe you got to play around with it and see how it is, but everything seems rather nice and promising. So let's just dive in, and I'll do my best to go over everything rather quickly and give a quick opinion on it. So there's 3 manifestos about upcoming balance changes and stuff, starting with flasks and ailments, ailment mitigation, and overall this entire one was very positive and extremely promising, I think. So to begin with, ailment mitigation, that's mostly talking about curses on you, poisons, bleeds, chills, freezes, ignites, shocks, all of that sort of shit, which felt like it ramped up last patch or last league, just because the power of flasks and a few other various ways of getting ailment immunity was taken away, and they did feel really fucking bad, especially curses. Curses felt pretty goddamn bad. These changes look like they will basically bring all of that in complete reverse and feel good again, but it's kind of up to you to solve the problems. Basically, they're giving you the tools to now solve the ailment issues, and it's up to you to invest a little bit into it in various places, and then you can become immune, or at least not care about those, as opposed to having to play reactively to all of those various ailments, which did feel kind of bad in lots of situations, as it just constantly made you feel kind of stressed out about mapping at a 100% of the time, which felt kind of bad. In any case, so basically, I think the biggest takeaway from this entire set of stuff is, maybe the biggest one was, the most standout one is purity of elements. Gives you a bit more resists, as still a reservation on your mana, but this time it's reserving 50%. But now it also makes you immune to all elemental ailments. So you can pick that up very early into the campaign and just not worry about elemental ailments and have a bunch of resists while leveling. Seems very comfortable and very convenient way of solving this. It does, of course, take 50% of your mana for some characters. Don't really care too much about their reservation because they don't get much out of their mana reserves. That's going to be pretty big. Otherwise, something you might have to shoehorn in. There's plenty of other things being mentioned about how to get various things. It kind of seems like they've backtracked a lot on flask changes, and flasks are going to be roughly as comfortable and powerful as they were before. Unique flasks are still, a nerfed state, so they're not as good as they once were, but they're still more comfortable to use, and they've got more situational effects applied to them through the orbs and all of that. Immune to bleed and corruption, so corrupting blood and bleed on your life flask is still going to be a thing, I think. Give you a lot of extra immunity when you pop it. In general, Pantheons got very much buffed, and a lot of them are pretty damn powerful, and they are going to matter in your character, it seems. So, if you want to make sure you're immune to Frozen, for example, then you can just get that as a focus, fill in sort of little gaps in your build. So overall, Pantheons look like they should be pretty interesting. Elemental avoidance has just been upped on gear and crafting and all that. Should be a lot easier to get. There was something about curses, I think. Consecrated ground, that's a pretty big one, so especially for Inquisitor, who always has consecrated ground. 50% reduced effect of curses, just by default. That does already make curses way nicer to deal with in maps and all that, but it's pretty easy to cap out that 50% to 100% reduced effective curses, and then not care about curses altogether, with all kinds of other new mods and stuff coming to the game. So getting curse immune, or not curse immune, but curse unaffected, is going to be pretty comfortable, and lots of various ways of getting ailment immune are going to be available to us as well. So it's kind of up to you to fix the problem, but the problem can definitely be fixed now, and it's not just, you know, pick a raider and then that's it. Everyone else can kind of do it too. So that's good stuff, very good stuff. Flasks, they, I don't know, did some stuff, make them a bit more versatile to life and stuff. I don't remember what this is. Come on, leave me alone. Utility flasks are usually used blah, blah, blah. So there will still be chances for you to be immune to ailments and stuff with your flasks, but they do want to, you know, make it a bit less powerful. So they're basically just giving you back what you used to have before, but it's lower duration on your flask. Still pretty worth using, and probably going to be a nice way to solve a couple of these things like chill and freeze, since having the, you know, proactive as opposed to the reactive is far nicer to have. So a bit less duration, but it should still be worth doing. They then identified the issue that utility flasks are still pretty easy to sustain if you're a zoomer, but not so good if you know, take a bit more time or don't have good movement speed or whatever. So they're going to try to add a few more modifiers and just in general make flasks last a lot longer, so you have to press them less or get more value for your flask press. All looks like pretty good stuff there. Unique flasks, so added, even after lowering the power of many unique flasks still outclass most magic. I mean, they should, I suppose. So this is just adding a whole bunch of extra eye level modifiers on the craftable flasks, on the magic flasks. In some cases, there will be some more powerful shit, so more chase, min-maxing, and crafting on your flasks. For example, the 14% movement speed during flask effect. So getting it back on your Quicksilver should make you feel pretty fast once again. Plenty of other things just made you slightly more well-rounded with the higher level modifiers, meaning you're going to have to try and pick up some of these higher level flasks. Hopefully they're not too rare though. That's all that is really an issue here, if they might be. Enkindling effects on flasks aren't impactful enough and aren't bringing flasks back the kind of power that non-permanent uptime should prevent. So they just made these slightly better. This one in particular, increased effect of the flask. It was up to 50 before, and to be honest, I thought that was fine. I used it plenty. Now it goes even higher. Cool, why not? Added more tiers to a few of the belt flask enhancements. Nothing too serious here that's really worth mentioning, just makes them all slightly nicer. Literally, I don't think anything too interesting to mention. Instant recovery on life flasks is pretty much what everyone uses, what they say. Total life recovery from a flask is reasonable but spread over a longer time. So basically they're halving the amount of time that it takes for the current flask over time recovery to apply, and it just makes it a lot faster. And I think that does mean you won't necessarily be only taking the instant flask. So if you also roll 50% increased recovery, you should essentially have your entire life flasks effect, like 3,000 life, whatever, just happen over a second, and that can be pretty powerful, I think. So we might be seeing a bit more of a shift towards that. Of course, you can't beat instant recovery, but it will be less potent. And then what else we got? We work some jewel, whatever. Rangers don't have a form of life recovery they excel at, while every other core character has a signature special recovery method. And they added a new improved existing passive skill in the form of a life and mana flask and stuff happening in the ranger area. We'll see how good that is. Probably not going to be anything too massive yet, because you don't really want to invest in that, and you rarely have points for that, but just going to have to wait and see how it comes into play. But the mana gain on hit thing sounds pretty good with attacks, especially if it's something for your build that really benefits off mana gain on hit, maybe some cast on crits and all that. So there might be some interesting things, but overall, the entire passive tree from a lot of these changes in the past 3 manifestos sounds like there's going to be a lot of new passive tree things. And in general, these manifestos that just came out, the formatting of them is very good, pretty straightforward. They tell you, what they think is a problem, and then they try and give the solution to it and some examples of it. So that's some good shit right there. Into the next one. The next one is the core character defenses and recovery. Now, I'm by no means a specialist because, as you know, what the fuck's a defense? We build attack and good DPS on this channel to some amount of well-roundedness and a little bit of defense so that we're not dying all of the time. So take everything I say here with a grain of salt, I suppose. In general, the intro thing and a lot of it is kind of starting out with saying Raider, and the dodge evasion thing is kind of too powerful, and that is true. Most of my characters in the past couple of leagues have had a lot of defense, usually because it's been a Raider, and it's because it just comes with the ascendancy, and then you spend another 4 points on acro and phase acro, and you've basically got like damn near capped defense in that sort of respect, and it feels really good, obviously. So they're trying to take away the sort of stacking of dodge and evasion and bring more power to just stacking things like evasion or armor or energy shield. So dodge itself is just too easy to achieve a high amount of, and it's always kind of a staple in any build on the right hand side of the tree. Taking those phase acro nodes, it's just a bit too easy. So they're trying to take away the dodge that's just a bit brainless and instead make it so evasion kind of makes up that gap, but it's a bit more investable and apparent as to how you are gaining your defense through your own means. Hopefully that makes sense. So basically they just removed dodge and they've cut blind in half, I think. And that was, I thought, kind of questionable, just removing it altogether, but it might still be okay. I mean, evasion's getting a lot of boosts there, and then they're adding this new thing called like spell suppression, which is similar to spell dodge, but instead of just evading an entire hit, you are suppressing it by like half. So what else happened here? We've got armor calculation that they've posted. This is the type of shit that just loses me immediately. There's all these calculations and numbers and huge essays and whatever. Let me kill something. So basically just making it much more investable in armor to do things. So if you get a certain amount of armor, it will mitigate a larger hit at a greater value. And overall, it looks to me like characters are going to get pretty damn thick and pretty damn unkillable with some investment with all of this new shit that's coming out in the past couple manifestos. So armor's going to get like at a much higher value. Determination now has flat armor, pretty damn thick. New modifiers for life recovery. So it's a pretty powerful stat. Life recovery percent and getting more life regen and shit. So there's all good stuff there. Evasion, this is a spell suppression thing. There'll be ways for you to invest into spell suppression instead of spell dodge, which should be seen in more greater capacities than the spell dodge. So it is something that is still going to be doable to mitigate some spells, but in a different capacity. Hopefully that's still good. Reviewing a whole bunch of evasion and armor stacking mechanics and stuff, and in some cases just straight up nerfs, but that's because they are buffing other areas of armor evasion. Characters who rely on armor are not protected against elemental damage. This one could be kind of big, but that is seen as a problem, and the solution is to just add more max LE res to areas of the passive tree that have armor in them. So you might invest a few points into this little node that has some armor, but it will also have some max res, and currently there's like one of those on the tree, and it's powerful, and it was very powerful when it first came out, and then it got a slight nerf, I think. So more of those sounds like they could be pretty damn thick, and if we can build characters that have like 80 max res just through the passive tree and a bunch of armor that now scales better, I don't think people are going to be dying if they actually invest in this shit. So that's kind of a problem, I think, but obviously other people wouldn't agree. In any case, Valid modifier increases quality on equipment which is required to maximize energy shield. So it's just, quality int, quality dex, that sort of stuff. They're just trying to take a bit of that power away and redirect it. Likewise with energy from naught, which was a very powerful small cluster node. So yeah, a few things just getting kind of reshifted, and in general, bases on energy shield are 20% higher, so you do still get more energy shield through the base items, and then some of the end game power kind of gets rediverted. And another thing they're doing is essentially just adding like a Diablo 2 style mechanic into finding your base gear. So let's say currently a Var Regalia can drop with 200 ES. That's just what it always drops. So if you find a Var Regalia, it's got 200 ES as a base. Now it can go from like 200 to 220. So if you want the absolute perfect min-max base, it might take a few Var Regalias to find, some grinding, or buying the most expensive one on the market, because that one will be the most sought after. And now there is a bit of a min-max in terms of the base on your items. So it is very much like a Diablo 2 style mechanic, because that's always been a thing back then. Just slight variance in your min-max. It's not quite like what some other people pointed out, like D3 Ancients, where, oh, now there's a bigger, better version of your gear that, your unique that you have to grind and it's going to be way better. It's not really like that. It's just the base defense, evasion, armor, and it's only slightly better. So it's just a bit of a min-max, and for most of us, it won't mean anything, I'm pretty sure. But if you want to craft like the perfect item that's going to be better than everyone else's, then you're going to need the best base. Energy shield often used with leech and regeneration, like life, and they don't really think that's, conducive with the actual intention of energy shield, where you kind of take some damage, take a little break, and then recover a lot of it, just passively. And so they're going to try and rework some things, and overall it does sound like a pretty big rework, so you won't necessarily be relying on leech or life regen, and it looks pretty interesting. Wicked Ward, damn near sounds mandatory for everyone now, but it should be interesting, because with all of the new tools and stuff that they're giving you here, you should be able to start recovering your energy shield after a very small amount of time, maybe half a second, and then recover it from 0 to full in a second. There's some pretty crazy stuff going on there. Ghost Dance was too powerful in the Evasion energy shield realm, so they're just giving everyone Ghost Dance, and then hopefully going ahead, putting it on the passive tree, and then hopefully reworking Trickster to be something good to replace Ghost Dance. Builds wanting to invest in both armor and energy shield have no mechanic that gives them synergy, so armor and energy shield usually is pretty separate, and you're not mixing them very often, and they're giving us some pretty cool shit. Divine Shield that makes it kind of total fizz reduction prevented from hits recently regenerated as energy shield, so it does sound kind of thick. Your Templar type characters might be seeing some of this hybrid type scaling and getting even more regen. Sounds pretty interesting. Some areas of passive tree shadow in particular have no defense against damage over time. It doesn't sound like it's quite fixing the problem, because it's basically saying there's not enough regen on that side of the tree to mitigate damage over time, and instead they're just making it so damage over time will do less damage to you if you spec into some shit, which isn't really the comfortable answer. We just want more life regen, or more ways of recovering life, and some stuff is going to be better there, just base gear, they're giving more life regen, but it'd be nice to see a good 1 or 2% extra actual regen on the passive tree in the shadow area, because it's not just about damage over time, it's about taking a bit of damage and then going to the next pack and not regening any life in between, if that makes sense. But we'll see. It's not a huge problem. A few specific mechanics grant a lot of life regen, especially with endurance charge stacking. So they're just thinking that endurance charges, in particular, things like Comb's Way, I think it is, the rings, stacked with endurance charge, give a bit too much life regen. They want to try and re-divert some of that power so it's not tied in with that as much. Shadow attackers don't have a form of life recovery they excel at. So new passive skill clusters to the shadow area, allowing investment in more life on hit, life kill, life leech. So that's pretty good. So, you know, more of the stuff that's down near the bottom of the duelist tree, which you can invest in if you need to. Now you'll be able to do that more in the shadow area too. Witch and shadow casters don't have accessible form of life recovery. It's good stuff as well. So new passive skill to the shadow and witch area for a life on kill, which is pretty good. Usually very convenient and fun nodes to take. Plenty of passive tree changes later. So then there's a whole bunch about block. So block, pretty damn good, and especially in the gladiator sense, because usually you can turn all of your block into spell block as well, and that is a powerful ascendancy. So they're going to try and give everyone a form of that sort of conversion, and then give gladiator something else of its own, and hopefully it's still going to be plenty usable. But it sounds rather interesting. So I'm not going to go entirely over it, but it sounds like it will be somewhat worth building into, since block will be easier to get as well. There's more avenues to get block, like shields can now roll up to 16. So a good rolled shield can have like 45, 46 block, which is pretty crazy stuff just right off the bat. Invest in a bit more and you can get 75 on every character that you really want to. And then if you want, you can take that new keystone that's going to convert a bunch of that attack block into some spell block as well, and it sounds pretty damn interesting, honestly, because it sounds accessible. Basically, the difference between me building a character with defense and no defense is the accessibility of it. If it feels like I'm investing too much into it, don't want to do it because I'm sacrificing other shit. But if it's like pretty convenient and right there for the taking, then I'm happy to take that defense, and that's kind of what sounds like is happening with block there. So shields are getting some more modifiers and having some of their less used ones removed. So crafting some good shields should be a bit easier. Blind was too good, they were saying, and that's pretty true. Pretty hard to argue that. Typically most builds could get blind in their build and just have like 50% miss rate on enemies off the bat. So they're making it a bit more in tune with evasion specifically, and that's fine, I guess. No real problem there. Flesh and Stone, blinded nearby enemies, too popular. Change to blind have reduced its power, so now characters may be missing a low cost. Defensive reservation effect, so just trying to identify that Flesh and Stone was used a lot in this capacity and give you something back in return. In this case, bit of reservation. And then Tempest Shield's going to have 25 reservation and give you some spell block as well as immunity to shock. That's pretty good. And then Fortify is primarily introduced a long time ago for melee characters to get more defensive options so that they can get in there and attack the enemies more and more easily compared to the ranged dudes. But at the end of the day, everyone was trying to fit it into their builds because it was too easy to do. They're trying to do it to change it so that Fortify mechanic is its effect will be based on your melee damage. So let's say you hit for like 3 melee damage with your shield charge on a caster, probably won't give you very much Fortify anymore, maybe like 1%. Whereas if you attach Fortify to your melee character and you hit for 1 million, it'll probably give you maximum Fortify effect, that sort of thing. Okay, quick breather and dive into this one. This one's quite a bit more confusing, I think, for anyone that doesn't really care about auras and curses and building specific aura bot or stacking aura support characters, that sort of thing. But I'll do my best anyway. For the most part, I don't think most of these affect us as a whole. It's more about the LE dot stuff, but they are pretty much trying to take away a lot of power of stacking auras. because it's been seen as too powerful. And for the solo character, that's less true these days. It's still pretty tough to build a very powerful aura stacker for yourself. For the group play, aura bots are way too powerful, and yeah, something's been kind of done there. Don't know if it'll change enough to remove your little support aura character, but let's say right now you got 5 people in your party and you invite an aura stacking character. He will amplify all of your party members' output by 10 times, which is 10 times maybe at a minimum, which is pretty crazy when, you know, the opportunity cost of inviting a 6th person that just does a bit of extra damage becomes just dumb compared to, you know, inviting someone that instead how am I trying to say this? Instead like, you know, boosts everyone else's power by 10 times. It's basically impossible to justify not taking a aura stacking character into your party if you are focusing on group play. And it's still going to be worth doing, I think, but hopefully they're just mitigating some of that. And the main way they're trying to do that is so it's harder to stack lots and lots of auras through changing reservation reduction with reservation efficiency. Now, I'm too stupid to know what that means, but there's been videos and stuff out there already, and I've chosen to not really look at them because I'll just log into the game, press it, spec into it once or twice and see how it is and figure it out. And for the most part, it sounds like us casual players for auras won't be affected at all. You'll still have your regular aura. You'll still be able to invest into getting like a second aura with a bit of this reservation efficiency, maybe even a bit easier, and then go about your way. So cluster stuff got kind of reduced as well, so that you can't stack stuff through the clusters as easily. Curses got less effective if you're stacking lots and lots of them, but slightly more effective if you're just using one, like, you know, a casual user of this stuff will. So similar sort of problems. Support curse characters way too powerful in a group setting, and just trying to make that a bit less powerful. So I skimmed over that pretty quick, but hopefully it doesn't hurt anyone too much. Elemental damage over time, currently Ignite and Cold Dots and stuff like that is a bit weak, and they're trying to sort of not necessarily buff them too much, but reshift the power, because it's hard to tell if this is going to be a buff or a nerf overall. It might just be a buff to playstyle and the way you build your characters, but maybe kind of a nerf to some damage aspects. Or at the very least a break even. So the idea is that it's not going to be as necessary or even doable to build into Elemental Overload and Elemental Equilibrium, and pretty much every single damage over time element character will be taking those two at the moment, and it does change your playstyle quite a lot, make you feel like you really have to have an Orb of Storms, you know, stop and pause your gameplay to apply this sort of shit and keep your Elemental Overload up. Not having to worry about that anymore will hopefully smoothen out gameplay with these things, and also the way you can build, because you won't have to avoid like fire damage additional sources on your fire builds as much. So it might be a positive change for that, but you know, that is a lot of power you might be potentially losing, and they're going to try and make up for it by saying player Ignite inherently deals 150% more than before. Whereas before it was 50% of base over 4 seconds. And now it's 125% of base over 4 seconds. So right off the bat, it probably means that you will be leveling your characters with Ignite much smoother, since you don't need to take Elemental Overload and Elemental Equilibrium early on. And a lot of the power of Elemental Equilibrium is reducing resists that monsters have in later game. So that won't really affect you earlier game, and you just straight up have much bigger ignites. So I'm not sure what it all means for cold damage over time. It doesn't look very good as far as I can tell, but for ignites, a lot of them look like they should be more viable and a bit nicer. Scorching Ray, from what I remember, with the way these changes work and the way that I just played Scorching Ray, looks like it should be worse, which isn't a good thing, obviously, but that's just upon first glance from my own silly little eyes. Otherwise, there is going to be a bunch more stuff that happened, so they're buffing all of these other skills to hopefully have better ignite ratios, because you're losing the elemental equilibrium, elemental overload. And then there'll be more options for damage over time on gear, so it's kind of up to you to bring your power level back up, but there's a bit more min-max to do, and in some cases really good shit. So what's a really good example? Essence of Delirium can now give you, like on rings, 15 dot multi, so now it's just 30 damage over time multi on 2 rings that you previously wouldn't have had, which is pretty damn big. Jewels can go up to 8% dot multi, pretty damn worth taking now. Amulets, just on all amulets, don't have to be influenced anymore. Damage over time multi suffix can go up to 26%. That's a pretty big gain. So overall, like if you min-max all this shit, you might be gaining like another 100% damage over time multi. That might be enough to really counteract anything that might seem like a nerf otherwise. And then ignite builds don't really focus as much on single target. They're more of a clear, and they're looking into a way to sort of help you do more things on single target with Flame Surge, new Burning Ground effect, or some shit like that, and a similar mechanic for attacks. And that, I guess, will be revealed more when it's closer to the actual time of the league. And then lastly, Burning Arrow, too complex for a level 1 skill, and that's, you know, pretty hard to argue. Pick it up at level 1, look at it, there's stacks, there's percents, there's ignites, there's all kinds of shit. It is kind of confusing. They're redesigning the skill to get rid of the stacking effect that has that secondary dot portion, and instead making it a bit more front loaded and then giving you fire damage to attacks against ignited enemies up to 200 to 300. So it might just mean that you can't really build it as sort of a elemental equilibrium stormfire type thing like we have in the past, but it leans far heavier into just being a pure fire thing, and it seems like it should actually be very nice for leveling with all these new changes, with the extra, you know, ignite buff, and then all of this actual just built-in scaling as it levels. Might be a very, very solid starter, and some of these I think might be very solid starters based off of these changes, like Hex Blast I think looks pretty good, and some other shit. Anyway, not really going too deep into it. So I think that's all I'll say. Holy crap, a lot of changes, a lot of manifesto. I signed up all these many years ago as a streamer to play some video game on stream for everyone and just click stuff and create big pretty explosions. And now I am supposed to actually be like a PhD man, studies Path of Exile, and it's just a bit overwhelming. It's a bit too much, you know. Prior to coming into a new league, there's all these manifestos and changes and overarching problems to solve, and yeah, just want a, you know, cool league and jump in there, get some new skills, and start moshing about. And I think we're going to get that from everything I've seen. 3.16 looks like it'll be pretty massive. I think if everything delivers the way it's supposed to, and if the league mechanic is going to be good, which, you know, no reason to believe it won't be. League mechanics are typically pretty good these days. If all that happens, probably best league ever. I'm going to say it. This early, if everything ticks the right box, probably going to feel like the best league ever. So, hope you guys enjoyed the little video and manifestos and all that. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.